Hi, sisters and brothers. We're back for another odd topic. Don't know if I gotta shut my video off. We'll go as far until I have to, and then I'll probably finish it up in another video. So we'll begin by showing you the odd topic, and it begins with a question like this, and then we're gonna tell you why we're allowed to ask this question, okay? So the question asked is, if I use animals to represent something else in a spell, yes, I said the word spell, is that called intention? Now, why do I have a right to ask that question? Okay, we have the right because of what it says here. Bear with me because I do have a lot of notes here, eked out. And the reason why we actually have the right to ask this, what might appear to be a silly question in the beginning, it really isn't because of what it says really in, and we know the passage well on this channel. I just can't find it because I did write it out. I actually wrote the verse out, and like I said, I took a lot of notes over a period of probably 2 days that I had, and I wrote it. Where is it? I thought I put it towards the end of the notes. Okay, just give me one moment to locate that verse, because I did write it out. So this is the reason, really, why we have the right, not only have the right, but really should be asking these questions. And you see, we've been taught in our current world that things are the way that they are because they're right. In religion, we're talking about specifically Christianity. So that's not where I wrote it. So I guess I did write it back here. Okay, maybe I didn't write it out. But it is found in Deuteronomy 4. I'm sorry about that. I should have brought my Bible with me. It's tucked away in my bedroom, on my desk in my bedroom. I'm gonna go get it. So give me a minute here. I'm gonna pause this. Sorry for this. Okay, I'm back. So we know that the verse that we're referencing here is found in Deuteronomy 4. We've actually looked at this verse many times, these verses many times in Deuteronomy 4. And it's on idolatry and its consequences is the heading in my Bible, about halfway through the chapter, less than halfway through the chapter. And it starts at verse 15. It says, "Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves." How would you corrupt yourselves? What is the idea of today's world, right? "Lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, a similitude of any figure." It doesn't have any exceptions here. It says any figure, the likeness of male, yeah, even male, or female, the likeness of any beast that is in the earth, on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth in the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, right? And when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the hosts of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them. Yeah, that's what they're doing. "And serve them which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven." Now, why might we be compelled to ask the question that I have written out here? Why might we be compelled to ask it? If I use animals to represent something else in a spell, is that called intention? An intention for what? An intention to deceive, isn't it? Now, we've understood the language of allegory, and I'm just going to set this over here in case I need it again. Where do we go back to possibly the first wizard practicing in the Bible? You know where I'm going to suggest? I'm going to suggest Abraham was a practicing wizard, possibly. Genesis 21:30. "And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs," we discovered they can also be subbed in as she-goats, shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. So Abraham's taking credit for digging a well. The well belonged to her, not him. This was, and I've got written in, this was a spell of intent. We also get the 7 thunders at the end uttering the truth. They're actually witnesses. That's what these thunders are witnessing to, the truth of the little book sealed up. So the well of 7, Beersheba, Genesis 49:10, Ezekiel 21:27, a ruin, I will make it a ruin. The crown will not be restored until she to whom it rightfully belongs, that's Shiloh, that's not a man, shall come, and to her I will give it. It's not to no man. The scepter belongs to she, the one who can prove her case. That means going after the wizards. That means going after the sorcerers who began their ritualistic castings here with animals of intent. They had an intention when they did it. So the spell that has to be broken is not only Nimrod's. No, it begins with Nimrod. We did the study last video, but Abraham as well as King Solomon, Sennacherib, Nebuchadnezzar. And we know that Nebuchadnezzar, he tore her house down when Nebuchadnezzar went after the matriarchal line in Jerusalem. And there we have stories surrounding where Jeremiah took the king's daughter. The king was Zedekiah at that time, I believe, took his daughters. Some says he went to Ireland or Great Britain, Scotland. We get Queen Teffy. We get Queen Skoda. We get the mentions of these particular names in reference to possibly as daughters of kings of Judah. And so there's always that myth that surrounds where Jeremiah took these daughters, and it was to protect the matriarchal line of where the true sovereign would come from. Now, that's my opinion. In all the study that I've done, they have worked this world of hate against female, and it's men hating on women. We know Satan, Beelzebub, Baal is another name for your husband. Beelzebub is another name for Satan, the accuser. It takes that right back to the first Adam, who is really Satan's seed against a woman's seed. So it comes down to fallen Adam's seed against a woman. He accuses her over and over, and he does it in the heavens when he stole her sovereignty from her, which was the right to rule her own children, her own creation. So we get the children have come to the birth, and there's not strength to deliver, because the women began to bow to this idea of man as God, because he was using deception to do it. And he was also, in all appearance, men like Abraham was using spell casting to do it. So we're going to go through a whole series of questions that I end up asking, forgive me for this, asking the AI. It was the easiest way to get the questions answered, and you can say that's lazy. I had to cut my time somewhere, and that was the way that I did it, because the AI was the quickest at coming up with the answers that I needed. If I'd had to dig through the information, it would have took me months and months and months and months and possibly years to come up with it. It was just so much faster this way, so forgive me for that. But it did answer a lot of questions. So let's ask this question and see. I wrote in a whole bunch of notes, biblical, as we go. And I also saved a lot up to the top. Now, whether we get into all of that, I don't know. But so let's ask this question and let's see where the discussion goes, okay? To get through the information fast that you may want to go in and research for yourself. There's no way Abraham should have had animals here in representation unless there was a spell of intent being cast here. And we are told in Deuteronomy 4, God is not fickle. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God does not change God's laws to make way for the wrongness of man playing God. That was all man doing it. His pride, Adam's pride, accused the woman so he wouldn't have to receive her law. He had conceived already in part of what he was going to do. He had intent there. Then we see men like Nimrod. We discussed it in the last video. And then we see men like Abraham. Now, I had asked this quick question. We'll go to it because I outlined this. So I know it's here somewhere. Outlined in red and pink. Oh my gosh. I'm having trouble locating it. Okay, so I guess it's back. Again, usually. If I go one way, it's usually going to go the other. It should be right there. There it is. So does Nimrod, this is a question I asked right quick. Does Nimrod predate Abraham? Yeah. Nimrod, a biblical figure, is said to have predated Abraham, according to a well-known midrashic story. Abraham was miraculously delivered from a fiery furnace into which he was cast by Nimrod. However, some interpretations suggest that Nimrod's ideology persists in Christianity and New Testament belief. And they do. Because Abraham was no different. He had too much pride, which is also another reason why he went out and got himself another woman, right? Had he never done that, that seed from that other woman would have never interfered with the woman's seed, which was to come from Sarah. I believe Sarah was supposed to birth a daughter, which would have represented the matriarchal line. And still, I believe, though they changed the interpretation to male and male, it was actually male and female. And in his pride, Abraham just couldn't stand that. So you can say Father Abraham. Father Abraham is known of being the father of these three main religions, is he not? He is. And these three main religions teach us what? Father as God. Why is that? Why is that? If Abraham was such a righteous son, why did he feel the need to go out and get animals when in Deuteronomy 4 God says, you saw no image of me, make no image of me. Yet we have nothing but image representation through animals and then through the form of a male standing in Daniel 2. So we know that these men, we'll loosely call them sorcerers, but there was a great ritual intent behind every action that they were performing. And those are the deep-seated questions that as wise women and men we should be asking. Why is there such a contradiction in the Bible? Why did God say this here, and then over here we got the men doing the exact opposite of what God said? You know why? Because we've got the female in rebuking the male is what we have in most cases here. Okay, so let's move forward. Question asked. If I use animals to represent something else in a spell, is that called intention? This is also a form of intention. Intention is a fundamental concept in Wiccan, spellcrafting, and ritual work. So in Genesis 15:9, we get the covenant of all these animals listed. We get the heifer, we get the she-goat, we get the ram, we get the turtle dove, and then we get the pigeon. So before we could understand what those animals represented, we had to understand the allegorical overlay of each creature. And we did that over many, many years. It didn't just fall on the plate. That's the work that you have to do to get to the answers. And so then you start to step back again and you go, well, then why did Abraham put these animals out and say that he had a dream to do it when Deuteronomy 4 refutes all of that and says, no, that's wrong. You're not supposed to do that. So it goes beyond mere wishful thinking and forms the backbone of successful spellcrafting. When using animals to represent something else in a spell, and they clearly were, when we go to Genesis 21:30, and he said, for these 7 ewe lambs, they were female. 7 females here, she-goats also, is another rendering. Shall thou take of my hand that they may be a what? He was claiming that they would be a witness unto me. So there's an intent here. It's an intent on these witnesses as well. All right? So it goes beyond mere wishful thinking and forms a backbone of successful spell crafting. When using animals to represent something else in a spell, this is also a form of intention. So that takes us to Deuteronomy 4. Also takes us to suffer not which to live. When we got looking at that word was masculine in its original form. So I wonder if it should not have always read suffer not a wizard or a sorcerer to live, because they were the ones that were performing these rituals from the beginning. So Genesis 21:33, we also get Abraham planted a grove. And all through the Old Testament, we get mention of a grove that they all went up and they all violated God's covenant in this grove, right? Was that a form of intent right here on Abraham's part? It sure looks it. It sure looks it, given the fact that this religion of Abraham, Father Abraham, and all three religions teach us the worship of man as God or Father as God. Yeah, that was intent. That's intent on their part. So Genesis 49:10, the scepter, that's Shiloh, that's a female, will not depart from Judah. I wonder if that shouldn't be mother. Nor the ruler's staff from between her feet, until she to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be hers. She's got to take back her scepter. And the way that she does that is to break the lies down. You're not going to take your form of power back to you until you learn to rightly divide the word of truth. And that is there for all of us. That's why it says, that's why the breakdown of the name Shiloh states to the one to whom it belongs to. It's to the one who is willing to do the work. And it is work. When you get in that word, it can be so overwhelming in the beginning. I can tell you that from experience. Years ago, when I used to sit as a little girl, 12 or 13, and they would read these thou and wilt and, all these old terms in English, I'd go, I haven't got a clue what they're talking about. And thank goodness I don't have to care about it. All I got to do is be washed in blood and I'm home free. Well, that's a giving you permission not to do the hard work. That's all that is. And over time, I would, from time to time, hear a verse that would grab me. And I have to believe it was the Spirit working in me at that time, just like it is in all of you. It's your choice to take up your staff. It's your choice to become the willing shepherdess and break the meaning of those words down for yourself and for future generations of the children to come, and for the better. So that's what it means to the one to whom it belongs, one who's willing to do the work. It doesn't just plop in your lap, which is what you're taught in man-made religion. So question, is there a spell of making someone, because I wanted to know how we connect intention to compulsion, to being compelled to do something. So is there a spell of making someone to be compelled to an oath by using a spell of intention? Answer, binding spells. Now understand, I do not come from a background of witchcraft. I have never dabbled in it. I have never really looked into it, to be honest. I have a couple of cousins who are knee deep in it, I think. How deep, I don't know. But I know they have no problems with witchcraft. How deep that goes, it's been years since I've seen them. So I don't really know them all that well in this older adulthood. But I do believe that they dabbled in witchcraft and still do. So, but my background is that I came from a family, I was took to church from the time I was very little. And it just was a natural progression over time that you would become saved and you're washed in the blood of a man and Father and Son and give all glory to them. And that was simply how we were raised. And it's not until you get older and you start to really question the heart and the intent of the men on that pulpit and the pride that you begin to be aware of that is seeping out of them when they say, well, man's your head and Father and Son and the woman was to blame, because they have no issues with accusing her. And to me, that just began to feel, when you begin to hear it week after week, you begin to hear the pride in them and you begin to hear the hate. And then you begin to question and hear, that does not come from a loving God. That comes from a hateful man. That's what that's from. Now, that's sense and reasoning over time. And that's why God says, I'll write the truth on your heart. It takes your heart wakening up and listening to what the pride of man, Adam, the accuser, Satan, is saying. So, I was not raised in a family of witches or warlocks or wizards or sorcerers, right? That's as far removed from us as anything you can think about. They just don't, it doesn't exist around here. Only in these late days that you start to hear this one and that one, and it doesn't come until later in life when it's something that gets pumped at you every day. That said, there's a whole lot more to it than what we've been taught. So let's see what we can get to. So is there a spell of making someone to be compelled to an oath by using a spell of intention? Answer. Binding spells are designed to restrict or prevent something or someone from acting in a harmful manner. They can be used to compel someone to an oath. There are two kinds of bindings: compelling spells that allow you to be dominant over a person or situation, and commanding spells that give you influence over people. Okay, next question. Can you perform a binding spell over someone by using animals to represent them in a spell of intention? Answer. Binding spells can be performed using animals to represent someone in a spell of intention. These spells serve various purposes, including personal protection and reducing someone's influence upon you. So, Deuteronomy 4, back again. You are not to make any image in the form of male or female or any animal form. Yet we have Abraham here clearly bringing up animals, saying, well, this is God's way. No, God says that's not my way in Deuteronomy 4. So we have a clear conflict here going on. We have something here that is not making an ounce of sense. So we are permitted to ask questions. We absolutely have to in order to come up with the answers that we need. So how would this spell work? Okay, a supposed gift of an animal that represents someone and is gifted to someone who doesn't understand the symbology of the animal in a spell of binding or intention as a witness to what the other person is doing. So Abimelech says in Genesis 21:29, after Abraham gives him these seven ewes, or 7 she-goats. Remember, the well name was Beersheba. It means the well of 7. And we know that it belongs to the women based on the verse found in Song of Songs, right? It flows from the spouse of the original covenant like a living water, like a springing well. So it's bringing all of this into play. And it's on us to understand what was going on and what's not right here. Okay, so the symbology of an animal in a spell of binding to or intention as a witness to what the other person is doing, the one that gifted it. But the one to whom it is gifted does not know this. So Abimelech clearly showed that he did not know what the gift was about. And he said, and Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he, Abraham, replied, accept these 7 lambs from my hands as a witness that I dug this well. So when we witnesses get our case set in order, we can actually point back to Father Abraham as saying that he claimed this well of the 7. That's what he's doing. And he's saying when he did it, those 7 was there when he did it, because he used animal representation to represent them. That's what he's saying. They knew it. No, they knew it. They deserve what they're getting. But you see, as witnesses, when they get their case in order, then they can witness back against what he did. No, that's a wizard over there. That's a sorcerer doing things that he should have never been up to. That's what it's saying to us, isn't it? That's what it sounds like to me. It may sound like utter foolishness to those who have absolutely no understanding of what they're bound down to. And there is a verse where God says, I promise you, you're all going to end up bowing to the king of Babylon. Every one of you. And the false prophets and wizards and sorcerers were prognosticating, saying, no, you will not be under the king of Babylon. And yet here we all are under a king called Baal, your husband, bridegroom, lord, and master, who writes the laws of this kingdom. Well, it seems like somebody was telling the truth there. However, it was not the men who were prognosticating, saying, the king of Babylon won't be your head. But the king of Babylon is, because guess who it tells us the king of Babylon is? Baal. Baalzebub. You know what that's another name for? The Lord of Dung. But you know what the Lord of Dung is another name for? Your husband, which you were told you're going to bow down to. And she said to him, you're going to bow down to them. You're going to bow down to this king, and he's going to put a yoke on your neck. It says that in Jeremiah. Yes, it does. So the one who said that that was going to come to pass actually is proving it to be true. We're all under man-made law. Who is Baal? Playing God. You can't see it, no, because you simply don't want to. It's pride. It's proud in a boastful man that won't see the truth. And God says, I promise you, when you fall into this snare, it's going to be really hard to get back out of it. Yeah, because your pride ain't going to let you. And it's no different with the harlot spirit. When you look at Revelation and what all the 7 churches have in them, we broke it down in a video, maybe not as clear as we should have. Just about all 7 had Jezebel. Well, what's a Jezebel? What did Jezebel do if she didn't build Ahab, her husband, up in the land? Jezebel, Baal, a woman who bows to her husband as if he's Lord and God in the land and helps build it up. Now that's what the Jezebel is when you do actually some study in the Old Testament, which is also what all the 7 churches are guilty of. And it goes back not just to the Jezebel, it goes back to the Baal idol, the men who expects to be worshipped. And if Satan, Beelzebub, hasn't gotten himself worshipped as Father, Son, and God, I don't know who has. So, yeah, because I dug this well. So Deuteronomy 4:15, for your own good. Yeah. Sorry. Be extremely careful, because you did not see any form on the day the Lord spoke to you out of the fire of Horeb. Not to act corruptly and make an idol for yourself. Well, they're shown making the idol. The men are shown making a male idol in Daniel 2. And what do you worship today if it is not a male idol? And it is so in the form of your husband, Baal. That is the idol spoken of all through the Old Testament. It's also the head of Babylon, Baal. And she said, you will indeed. Every nation of this world will fall to this idol of Baal. Husband, you have. The 3 Abrahamic religion is 4 billion strong, 5 billion strong, supposedly. Yeah. That's the bulk of this world under Baal worship. They're worshiping Baal. It's always a man. Father, the power of their God is in their arm. And you deny and you blaspheme your creator, your maker, your potter. That is your mother. Now, so you were not to make an idol to corrupt yourself in the shape of any figure, a male or a female. That means a man or a woman. Or the form of any beast. So here we've got Abraham bringing up beasts, claiming that these are representation that God told him to take, right? Allegory. You got to understand allegory. So first question, can you perform a binding spell over someone by using animals to represent them in a spell of intention? I know sometimes this gets to sound like I'm asking the same question over and over, and maybe I am, but I need it to understand it for myself. So using animals symbolically in binding spells. Yes, in many magical traditions, especially in folk magic, chaos magic, and certain branches of witchcraft, wizardcraft, sorcery. Animals can be used symbolically to represent people in spells, including binding spells. This is typically done through correspondence and intention, not through harming animals or invoking literal control over them. Here is how it might work symbolically and ethically. Symbolic representation, animal correspondence. Practitioners often choose animals that share traits with the person they're focusing on. So, for example, a fox might represent someone cunning or elusive. So, we do so get the mention of the fox. Can't trust the foxes that has spoilt the vineyard or that will spoil the vineyard while it's in bloom. So we understood those foxes appear in Ezekiel 13, right? And I forget what it said about those foxes. They walk in high places, these foxes, which is allegorized as your false prophets, these foxes. They're so smart and wily, these foxes. A lion could symbolize someone powerful and dominant. A dove might represent someone peaceful or gentle. Um, Totemic or archetypical use. The animal becomes a stand in for the person in the spell, much like a puppet or a photograph might be used. It makes me think of Deuteronomy 21:6. Then all the elders of the town nearest the body shall wash their hands over the heifer's neck. So she gets the blame. Heifers whose neck was broken in the valley. She was the one who had to take the blame, the heifer, which was the woman's seed, for this murder that happened in the land. And it was the high priest who was doing it. So, what were they doing if they were not performing an act of intent? It was an act of intent using an animal as a substitute for personal representation. That's what it looks like. So, Jeremiah 51:63. This is another one. We do. We see Jeremiah doing this one. When you finish reading this scroll, tie a stone to it and throw it into the Euphrates. Then you are to say, in the same way, Babylon will sink and never rise again. Because of this disaster, I will bring upon her, and his people, will will grow weary. Sorry, I can't understand my own writing. So, spell of intention. Binding with respect. Binding spells are often used to prevent harm or stop someone's negative influence, not to control or punish. Ethical practitioners emphasize consent, justice, and karmic balance. So, ritual example, choose an animal symbol, a figurine, a drawing, or even just the name that represents the person. Write your intention clearly, e.g., I bind, and in brackets, the name, from causing harm to me or to others. Wrap the symbol in thread or place it in a jar with herbs like rosemary, protection, or black salt, banishing. Seal it with a chant or affirmation of your intention. So, important considerations. Never use real animals in a way that causes harm or distress. Well, they clearly did in the Genesis 15:9 covenant. He was told, he said, by this God that he heard in his head, to cleave the first three animals in the midst. So they were dead in order to be cleaved, were they not? And I suspect that the dove and the pigeon were also dead. They just weren't cleaved. So never use real animals in a way that causes harm or distress, that crosses ethical and spiritual boundaries in nearly every tradition. Intent matters. Binding spells can backfire, and this one backfired big, or create unintended consequences if done out of anger and vengeance, and that's why it was done. And it is going to backfire. Um, Eventually, she says, you're going to fall into this snare and you're not going to be able to get out of it except for my graciousness and my mercy, sending wisdom into you. This is a snare that you're not going to be able to free yourself from. So it does, in fact, backfire on man. What's he caught up in? He's caught up in war. He's caught up in battles. We're caught up in materialism. We're caught up in every wrong thing that this supposed word of God preaches against. And yet we're told, hey, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Just believe. Blood washes you. Blood don't wash you. It's the blood that allows this kingdom to exist in the condition that it's existing in. That's the problem. So, cultural context. Some traditions, like certain indigenous or African diasporic practices, have specific protocols around animal symbolism. Respect and understanding are key. Well, do you believe that or not believe it? Answer, because you're not supposed to be practicing. According to the Bible, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Answer, that's a fascinating and layered concept. What you're describing sounds like a spell that blends elements of sympathetic magic, symbolic transference, and covert intention setting. Let's break it down and explore how such a spell might work, both magically and psychologically. Spell concept. The symbolic animal gift as a binding witness. So we actually bore in this the spell of this intention. These 7 witnesses actually bear witness to Abraham saying, this is the well that I have dug, right? We see it in the world, the well that Abraham dug, right? So while we got blamed for being the witnesses and bearing witness to it, we also at the end get to bear witness to it as these witnesses that come forward with the truth, right? Um, it's all intertwined there in all the webs that he spun out to entrap her in that lie. So, core idea, a person gives another symbolic animal, a figurine, charm, or even a live animal that represents themselves or a specific intention. The person that it's gave to, is unaware. Well, I think that's devious and deceptive in itself, is unaware that the animal carries magical significance. The spell uses the animal as a witness or anchor, a magical observer or tether that binds the recipient's actions to the spellcaster's awareness or influence. There's a lot going on there, isn't there? Magical mechanics. Here's how the spell might function in a magical framework. A sympathetic link. The animal represents the spellcaster or a specific intention. Through ritual, the caster imbues the object with symbolic resonance, perhaps using hair, breath, or a written intention. This creates a sympathetic link between the caster and the object. 2. Concealing binding. The act of gifting the animal is the ritual's final step, transferring the object to the recipient without revealing its magical purpose. The recipient accepts it freely, which, in magical logic, may count as consent, even if uninformed. 3. Witness function. The animal acts as a magical eye or ear, possibly observing the recipient's actions or energy. Now, let me just insert here for a minute. We get one of the meaning of Esther to mean hidden. So we also understand that the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is hid in a line of daughters that is actually bearing witness to everything around them. And we can link that 7 eyes of God to the occipital lobe or atlas, I forget which it was, in the back of the head that allows you to perceive things in a spiritual manner and from the heart is what the 2 kind of links to. So I'll write the truth on your heart and I'll write it there based on what you're witnessing to, right? So we get this hidden idea in this little girl, Esther, right? That's part of what's hid in this line. And they are so the witnesses. They are able to witness against this well of water that Abraham dug and what its intent was through the animals that he was not supposed to have going on in this ritual. You are not to make any idols. That's what this allowed to come about. So that's why it's important. Again, we'll go back here before we continue, because you got to continue to keep linking it in your mind. So does Nimrod predate Abraham? Nimrod, a biblical figure said to have predated Abraham. According to a well-known Midrashic study, Abraham was miraculously delivered from a fiery furnace into which he was cast by Nimrod. However, this is important. Some interpretations suggest that Nimrod's ideology persists in Christianity in New Testament beliefs. So that goes against, it goes to saying the fact that Abraham was actually in with Nimrod's type of thinking. And he was. He was. Look at what he did. Look at what he did to Sarah. Oh, he was a great man, his father Abraham, whose three main religion all believes in Father as God. And yet he goes against what Deuteronomy 4 says. Don't tell me he wasn't casting here. He was spell casting here. And we see it all through the Old Testament, and it is done with intent against the sovereign. So through ritual, the caster imbues the object, which again is why we come back to the rod of power that Shiloh, to whom the one it belongs to. Break it down. Break their spell down. That's what it's saying. Break it down. And you do that, you take your authority back by doing the hard work. You don't sit and twiddle your thumbs and go, I have faith, 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 and I'm washed in blood, and that's all it takes. That's what the boys want you to say, girls. This is a test. It is a test. So through ritual, the caster imbues the object with symbolic resonance, perhaps using hair, breath, or a written intention. This creates a sympathetic link between the caster and the object. 2. Concealing binding. The act of gifting the animal is the ritual's final step, transferring the object to the recipient without revealing its magical purpose. The recipient accepts it freely, which in magical logic can count as consent, and even if uninformed. And the animal acts as a magical eye or ear, passively observing the recipient's action or energy. It may not literally spy, but it could symbolically record or reflect the recipient's behavior, especially in relation to the caster. Isn't that what we're doing? Intention anchoring. The object might also serve as a tether for the caster's intention, such as protection, influence, or even a curse. Intention anchoring. The recipient's proximity to the object keeps them within the spell's field of effect. Psychological layer. Even without belief in magic, this setup has psychological weight. The recipient may feel subtly watched or influenced, especially if they later learn the object has meaning. The caster feels empowered, having enacted a ritual of control or connection. If the animal has cultural or personal symbology, it may unconsciously affect the recipient's behavior. Example, the wolf figurine. Let's say someone gives a small wolf figurine to a friend. The friend thinks it's just a cool gift, but to the giver, the wolf represents loyalty, vigilance, and silent observation. The figurine was ritually charged to witness betrayal or guard against lies. The friend keeps it on their desk, unaware it's a magical, I don't got that right, it's magical. If the friend acts against the giver's interest, okay, it's magical sentinel, there it is. Unaware, it's a magical sentinel, sorry. If the friend acts against the giver's interest, the spell might symbolically record this, allowing the caster to sense it or act on it magically. Ethical considerations. This kind of spell treads into murky territory. It involves non-consensual magical influence, which many traditions view as unethical. It may backfire if the recipient discovers the intent and rejects or destroys the objects. Is that what the witness's responsibility is doing that in the land? It actually backfires on them because this is clearly a spell of intent. It is. Because you're warned not to make images and idols and say this is God. We saw King Solomon doing it with the supposed cherubs in his temple. He was a great spell caster. He was casting a great spell then and there, and he knew what he was doing. Don't tell me he didn't. Just like Nebuchadnezzar knew what he was doing, creating this gold idol of a man as your Lord and God. They all knew what they were doing. They were spells of intent. And that scepter that Shiloh takes back is so her authority over their spells. She has power over the word. That's her true power. To break the word down. It also means to break their spells down in their lies. And that's found in the little book sealed up that these 7 thunders utter. So it treads into murky territory, and it really does. But it involves a non-consensual magical influence, and it does, which many traditions views as unethical. So what he did is very unethical. The first Adam practiced to accuse. He knew what it was going to get him. He knew it was going to get the host out of her womb and a yoke around her neck. And the daughter Zion is told in Isaiah 52, take the yoke off of the neck, take back your throne, take back your sovereign position of authority, take back your scepter. That's what you're supposed to do. So it may backfire if the recipient discovers the intent, if the witnesses discover the true intent, and rejects or destroys this object. So again, we saw King Solomon making what? 2 bull images and calling them the cherubim in this temple. It's all intent. These are all spells of intention. That's what they are. So 7 thunders utters the truth as witnesses to the little book seal. So that's how it comes back and backfires on these practicing sorcerers. It raises questions about magical surveillance and manipulation. Do you believe in that? Well, if you believe in a higher power, if you believe in God, you know we're being watched. I believe you're being watched every second of the day. I feel it. We do feel it, don't we? Some of us are closer connected to that. We're aware of being watched. We are. Question: could part of this spell casting also in its intent be used to bind what that animal represents? Answer: absolutely. Binding what the animal represents could be a central or even primary function of the spell. In fact, this adds a deeper layer of magical sophistication. Let's explore how that would work. Binding the essence, using the animal as a symbolic vessel. In this version, the animal isn't just a witness. It's a magical stand-in for a quality, a force, or an archetype. By gifting it, the caster is binding the essence to the recipient, binding the recipient's behavior in relation to that essence, or binding the essence itself, restricting or controlling it through the object. Well, that seems like that's what they've done. 3 possible binding intents. Binding the essence to the recipient. The animal represents a trait, e.g., cunning, loyalty, aggression. The spell binds that trait to the recipient, either to amplify it or to burden them with it. Example, a fox figurine is gifted to someone to bind them to cunning and trickery, perhaps to make them more manipulative or to expose their deceit. The recipient unknowingly carries this energy, which may influence their behavior or how others perceive them. Binding the recipient's relationship to the trait. Number 2, the spell could restrict or control how the recipient interacts with a quality the animal represents. Example, a lion charm is given to someone to bind their courage, dulling their boldness or making them hesitate in moments of power. The lion's symbolic strength is caged within the object, and the recipient is subtly disempowered. 3. Binding the archetype itself. In more advanced or animalistic traditions, the spell might attempt to bind the spirit or archetype of the animal itself using the object as a person or anchor. This is high stakes magic. Binding a living archetype like a wolf or a crow is akin to invoking a god or spirit and trying to trap it. Yeah. You suppose that's what these wizards, these warlocks, these sorcerers were actually up to? It could be used to silence that force in this world or to keep it from influencing the recipient. So, ritual elements to support this. To bind the essence, the caster might. I got sun here. Oh, no, Sunday. Sorry. Use sympathetic materials like fur, feathers, bones, or images of animals. Perform a naming or invocation ritual to call the spirit of the animal into the object. Seal the object with wax, thread, or sigils to lock in the binding. Speak an intention aloud, such as, by claw and breath, by eye and bone, I bind the essence to take form alone, this form alone. A note of magical responsibility. Binding spells, especially those involving archetypes or spirits, are not to be taken lightly. They can create unintended consequences, e.g., the recipient becomes overwhelmed by the bound trait. Attract the attention of the animal spirit or its guardian. Backfire if the object is broken, returned, or ritually cleansed. Some traditions teach that what you bind in others, you also bind in yourself. So the caster might be prepared to carry part of that burden. So that's the research I've done on that right now. So, you know what? I suggest you go in and look up wherever the word sorcerer appears. There's also sorceress. Was there a willing sorceress that helped him along called Babylon, called the harlot? And yet God warns the women specifically. It seems like it is the women being warned here. Let me see if I can find it. I hate to mess around with it when I do this. See, it's not even in agreement with me right now. It won't even go small. Well, let's see if we can do it this way. There we go. So it's found in, where is it? Right there. It's found in Jeremiah 27:9. And it says, but as for you, do not listen to your prophets, your diviners, or your interpreters of, I can't see it all. Let me see if I can pull this up over it. Oop, did I shut it off? Is that shut off now? It is. I bet it is. Is this shut off? Yeah. There it is. Now it's gone. Yeah, see, I tried to pull it up and it just did that. Sorry. It shut it off, but I started again. So it's in Jeremiah 27. Let me look it up. No, it's because I axed it. So I did say Jeremiah 27, right? So, just look it up. Look it up. This is all interconnected. It's connected to a power. It is some kind of power that the men began to mess around with, which is why it comes back to suffer not a sorcerer. It wasn't the witches that were practicing this. It wasn't the women called witches. They were actually known as angels in the beginning. It appears to be the men, and it began with the first pride of man called Satan, who is the the father of this world, the father of lies. And these are all the children of that father of lies, the Satan seed, who's getting himself worshipped as God, and who was against the woman's seed. Now, that's what it comes back to. We've already examined what the mystery of lawlessness, what the Antichrist is, what the antinomian is. And we saw what man was attempting to do in the Old Testament. And it tells us in the very opening when Adam accused the first woman, and it was to steal her creation out from her womb, her children. You told the potter, the maker, the creator, she had no power over her own clay, her creation. Which means she had no right to write the law over her own creation. No, you're not. The rock from whence you are queried from, you queried from your mother. That was the other thing I looked into, the story of the green man, right? Well, when you go looking into all these old temples, they have this images of the green man. That's a lie. He stole the image of the mother. And you know who your mother is? Mother Earth. Mother Earth, who you're queried from, not your father. And he didn't breathe life into him or her. She does it. So there's so many aspects to take a look at. The green man, he stole Mother Earth's title. That green man. That's why you get the he. And every time you start looking at it, it takes you right back to Mother Earth, the power of Mother Earth. What was the thing I was looking up? Jeremiah 27. Let's see if I can find Jeremiah here. Jeremiah 27 said what? Forget what I was looking for. Verse 11. Right? Jeremiah 27, verse 11. But the nations that bring their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him, those will I let remain still in their own neck. I think this is a lie. This is a lie. God was prophesying that when you put your neck under the king of Babylon, which is Baal, I think this is what the true God, was prophesying, that there will come plague in your land. It says, I spake also to Zedekiah, king of Judah, according to all these words. So Zedekiah was the father of the daughters that Jeremiah, I truly believe, was trying to preserve the matriarchal line, the female line, when he took them out and hid them. And we were told that Ephraim was promised he would be a father. No, it's a mother of many nations. It's a mother that gives birth to the nations, not no father. The birthright don't belong to a man. It belongs to the daughters. Why now do I see every man standing around with his hands on his hips as if he can give life? He don't give life. It's the creator that gives life, and the one that forms the clay in her womb. She says the children have come to the birth, but there is not strength to deliver. Why wasn't there strength to deliver? Because the women had turned away from their own head, which was Mother Wisdom, because the men had struck her and said, no, we don't receive your law, even though they had agreed to the covenant. Now that's to be understood. So in Isaiah 27, it says, why will you dig? Where is it? It said, therefore hearken not unto the words of the prophets that speak unto you, saying, ye shall not serve the king of Babylon, for they prophesy a lie unto you. And they were prophesying a lie. So they've got this all misspoken, I believe. The true God was trying to tell them, if you do this, come under this king, you will all end up coming under this king called Baal in Jeremiah 50:51. The king of Babylon is Baal. Baal is another name for your husband. Another name for your husband is also Satan the accuser. You want to go back and watch the little advertisement that Ryan Reynolds produced. He's there dressed like the devil. And he's got a little woman on his arm. You know why he's the devil? He's playing Adam, the accuser, Satan. Man, could you not get bigger hints? But no, reasoning is only for the wise, I guess. You know, the simple ones just don't get it. They don't get simple reasoning. And all of that, him built up in thick red clay, him with horns, him with hooves, with a woman on his arm, it's all allegorical, and we broke it all down. But for those who can't think, they just can't believe that, oh, man, because man has the power in his arm, he must be the God image too. No, he agreed to take her law and covenant. And then he accused her. That's what he did out of pride because he just couldn't handle it. That's the pride of Satan, Adam, the accuser. Oh, that my accuser had written his accusations in a book. Now, I said that was in Jeremiah 26. Now it's, I said it was in, where did I say? Isaiah. Did I say? I said it was in Job 26. It's Job 31, I think. 30 or 31. She says, oh, that my accuser had written his accusations in a book, I would wear it like a crown upon my head. And in the end, she states, more or less, I will use it to exonerate myself. All of his accusations, I'm going to turn them on his head, which is what the witnesses are supposed to do against men like Abraham, who was using it as a spell of intent to twist the truth to suit their pride. Abraham went out and got another woman when he was told that Sarah was the chosen line. And I think he went out and got another woman with the intent that he was going to produce a son that would come after the female line, because I believe Sarah was supposed to give birth to a daughter, not a son. This world is made up of male and female. It's not made up of male, 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 or male, and male, or male. The male has no life without the female, none. And it is Mother Earth that is the rock that we are quarried from. And in symbology, it is your mother that you're quarried from. You're not quarried from your father. Your father don't give life to you. Your mother does. But she says, the rock that writhed in pain to birth you, you denied. And she states that in Deuteronomy 32:18. Yet everybody goes, well, that's man. Wisdom says, when I called, you couldn't be bothered to listen to anything I had to say. And so when I come and you can't be bothered to listen to me and reason the truth out, I'm going to laugh at you on the day of your calamity when you bring it all down on your own heads, because that's what you're going to do with this male idol. I'm going to laugh and I'm going to send my rod. And she states that in Psalm 2, and it ain't no male she's sending a son. It is no son caught up or male child. It is the female child called Ephraim, the firstborn daughter of mother's womb. That the whole world denied and said, we're not going to receive the law of her tongue. We're going to steal the host out of her womb and get ourselves worshipped. That's just what they did. Father and son. Ah, glory to you. Screw you, mother and daughter. We'll do to you whatever we want because we own you. That's what Father taught them. Listen to them. They believe it. They believe it. No sense in reasoning with these boys. And they were warned. Mother said, I told you when you dug this pit, allegorized as that well that Abraham dug. We did a video on that too. You're going to fall in that and you're not going to be able to come away from it. You're going to be destroyed. I hope I said everything I was supposed to say there. But God was warning you, when you come under this male idol called Baal, your husband as Lord and God, yep, you're all going to come under it. And this entire world is under this notion that God is father and son, or he, or he. Doesn't really matter what religion you look into. They're all he's, and you she's are just possessions. And she warned you that that's exactly what was going to happen. And you know what the false prophets, men and wizards and sorcerers were promising you? Nah, you're not going to come under Baal. Then why, pray tell, do we have the warning in Jeremiah 50:51? Right quick here. Sorry, no such thing as quick with me, is there? Jeremiah and Ezekiel. So it's Jeremiah 50, I believe, or 51. Yeah. Declare ye among the nations and publish and set up a standard. Publish and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken. How is she, the harlot spirit, and he taken? They're taken by the truth and the witnesses that turn back and witness against that false well of water that gets dug. It's actually also allegorized as King Solomon digging into hell. Yeah, that's what we also did a study in that. So Babylon is taken. Baal is confounded. Merodach, that's Marduk. It's another name for Baal. Yeah, it is. Look it up. It all goes back to your husband. Is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. For out of the north there cometh up a nation. That nation out of the north was allegorized as Israel herself, the daughter, Ephraim, against her, against the harlot, which is the adversary. She's the adversary, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. So we get a layered effect going on. So while it may have happened in the past, it also has a future prophecy fulfillment underneath the allegorical language when you understand it, and that's through the Spirit, through the reborn Spirit of Israel. That is your cornerstone, the woman, the righteous daughter, denied in the beginning, and you denied her law. And so a man ends up yoking woman under his religious law and law system, steals the host out of her womb, and gets many, many nations like King Solomon actually was doing, which we realized in the last video. We recognized in the last video what it meant, this cloud of witnesses. And when you come up with a number in Hebrew, it has to do with nations. A cloud of witnesses is the nations. So what was Solomon really up to when he took 700 wives and 200 concubines? Well, his idea was to actually create nations from these women that would bow to a male idol as God. That's all the trickery. Goes back to the 666 in your head that gets stamped in your head. This religious lie. The mystery of lawlessness is man's law against the woman who was appointed to give you the law. The Antichrist is man against her. Baal, which is why you've got the king of Babylon here coming down. And the daughters of the north, Ephraim. So we had Israel divided into really two nations. So eventually these two nations are promised to actually return back to the true living God. And that's the firstborn daughter, Ephraim, and the firstborn son out of Judah. I think that's how it goes. And that's why we get the north here coming against, because the north was identified as the 10 tribes where the firstborn daughter comes from. And they break those images and idols down, which is allegorized as the stone cut out with 8 hands in Daniel 2 that smashes the toes on that made-up male god by the proud and boastful first man and Adam, accusing the first woman who was the spirit of the original covenant, yet is she the wife of thy original covenant. Yeah. He ain't your head, he never was. The laws of God was for us all in equal terms. And that was considered a gently flowing law system that came from Shiloah. Shiloah takes us back to the scepter between Judah's feet, and it will not depart until she, to whom it belongs to, cometh. And it's to her that it is appointed to, and it is a scepter. It's funny that we get the scepter, we get wizardry, we get witchcraft, we get all of this stuff, but yet the power is over the word. That's what you get. That's how you take your authority, by breaking this word down. Not twiddling your thumbs going, oh, I have faith, so I'm washed in blood. You don't wash in blood. You're stained in it. And you're supporting his law system of blood. That's what that means. God don't see you, God don't hear you. The only one she's going to hear is those of us taking back our authority. That's who she's going to hear. Anyway, there's our video. A lot longer than I thought it would be. Usually is anyway. There's a lot more to this topic that needs to be examined. I understand that, though the discussion is there, there's still many elements that needs to be discussed and looked into. And I may not be the one to look into that. I'm not great at this witchcrafty stuff. I never was. It's something I always tried to steer clear of. I felt scared by it, scared off by it. I still do, to tell you the truth. I'm told that, I have permission to look into it, but you always have to be, always be aware and trembling the entire time in many sense that you're doing it, going, am I overstepping my boundaries? Am I taking up the cause that God wants me to take up? Am I taking up the standard that I need to take up? And so I think it is the standard that you have to be always struggling for. You have to be always searching for the standard of truth. And that's what you're always looking to be defined by. As a mother of truth, and Emeth, I believe this is the mark that she sees in us, the mothers of truth. M means mother, Emet means truth, Met means death. So when you take away the E, which is in the story of the golem, you actually remove your mother, your creator, your maker, and you bring on your own death when you do that. Now, that's all in the story of the golem, the folklore story. It's a Jewish folklore story on the golem. The word golem actually appears one time in the Old Testament. We studied this years and years ago. And I've never lost sight of that. That's what we're marked with, Emmett. It's the XX. The reason they were marked with X is defining the matriarch. Yeah. The matriarch. The X. Yeah. Anyway, so that's everything for now. Sorry, I babbled a little bit there. Good to be back with another video. I hope I said something that resonates with you. I hope you're all staying strong in your faith. It's easy for one daughter to stand up against one man, but when it's 10 men in a room with one woman, and you've got maybe 5 other women in the room, and those 5 women remain silent and you're the only one speaking, and I'll tell you, those 10 men ain't got no issue jumping on one woman. It's funny how the women will remain silent. It's going to take all of us to make the change. And so many of us are too weak to hear it. We just don't want to hear it, do we? It hurts too much. And it takes something to battle. You're going to have to know your word. It means you're going to have your sword sharp. And you're going to have to be able to take on every word that comes out of their mouth. Now, that's what it means to be a strong one. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. You're either going to pretend or it's going to be real. So, anyway, glad to see you all. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all safe. I hope you're doing well in your studies. I hope you're standing. And above anything else, I hope you're all blessed with the truth. And I thank you for watching. I hope you're all blessed with a lovely day. And thank you again.